Um, we have now reached the top of the hour. I'm gonna talk slowly for the next probably 2 minutes here, because again, we're expecting quite a large audience today. Um, my name is Preston Clark. I am the president and co-founder of Law Insider. You probably got an email invitation to this event from me or from Molly, from someone on the Law Insider team. So thank you. Thank you for being a loyal Law Insider subscriber. Thank you for opening your email. We're spending a lot of time right now with Mike Whalen and Molly Abel to put more really cool things inside your inbox, like this webinar today. So please continue to stay subscribed, and I think you're going to find that it's worthwhile. I'm joined today by Otto Hansen and Evan Harris, two gentlemen who I've got to know over the last several months, who are spending a lot of time thinking and innovating in the realm of contracts and AI. Law Insider, we think a lot about contracts. Maybe we think only about contracts at times. And certainly with the increase of adoption of AI. I mean, gosh, we've been talking about AI for seemingly a decade, but suddenly now it is becoming the thing that we're all trying to figure out and understand in a deeper way, how it impacts our companies at large, how it impacts our jobs, how does it impact the work that we do day to day. And there's lots of experts. Suddenly, there's lots of experts in every corner, AI experts. And I think that there's lots of AI theory, lots of LLM theory, lots of GPT theory. And what's most interesting to me, and hopefully most interesting to you, is hearing some theory and some sort of what this is and how it works, but also hearing it from the people who are building on top of it. And that's what Otto and Evan represent for me. And it's why it was so important for Law Insider to host this event today, because we wanted to learn from them and we wanted to hear what they're working on and how they're approaching it, and to give us all some context into how we might bring AI into our work, into our legal work, into our contract work. So thank you both for being here. I'm mostly going to be in the background. I'll probably jump in towards the middle and in to make sure we're good on questions. By the way, you're welcome to ask questions. The Q&A is the place to do that, not the chat. That way other people can see your questions. You can upvote questions that you like. So please use that. You can also put stuff in chat. I'll try to monitor that, but my life is easier if you put your questions in the Q&A. We're going to try to get to as many of them as we can. We already have 300 participants on, and I expect that number is going to continue to go up over the next 10 minutes here. And then everything applies to every webinar you've ever been on. I promise you. Yes, we're recording it. Yes, we're going to send the recording out. Yes, we're going to get slides from Otto and Evan. Evan has been putting a bunch of time into the presentation today. I'm sure Otto has too, but I know for a fact that Evan is really going to bring the heat today with some incredible insight. So you will get these slides. We will send the recording. You can ask questions. If I don't send the recording and the slides 5 minutes after the event, cut me a little bit of slack. I'll try to get it to you as soon as I can with the team here. If you're watching this as a recording, you can find these same resources available from lawinsider.com/resources. Stephen, this is live. This is happening right now. So if anyone's wondering if this is a pre-recorded event, it is not. Okay, Otto, Evan, did I miss anything? Did I not set you guys up in a particular way that you want me to revisit before I just completely hand the keys over to you?
No, I think you covered the bases really well, Preston. Thank you for the generous introduction.
Okay, great. So we will get started. We are going to be doing more events like this. We're going to be launching a podcast next month called Future of Contracts. So if you're interested in the intersection of technology and contracts, a lot more of this content is coming your way. We also just announced a partnership with TermScout, which obviously Otto and Evan represent, and we're going to be talking more about that at the top of the hour. So that'll be at the end of the event. This is purely educational here today. So sit back, take out a pad of paper or get your keyboard ready to take notes. And without further ado, Otto, the stage is yours.
Awesome. Preston, thank you so much. And to everyone who's here, thank you for joining us. I think we have a really exciting hour ahead of us. By way of agenda, Evan, the Chief Technology Officer of TermScout, mastermind behind our own AI solutions, he's going to cover really the bulk of what we promised in this webinar. He's going to talk about things like basic history of AI, natural language processing, kind of how we got to where we are today. He's going to provide some insights into how previous regimes of AI and how legal tech has sort of found its way into contracting workflows for a long time now. And he's going to give a primer on some of the hottest technologies in AI right now, OpenAI in particular, and talk about some of the recent advancements in LLMs. Really high level, Evan's goal, I think, is to provide all of us with just a little bit more fluency and proficiency in the fundamentals and core concepts underpinning this sort of revolution in AI right now. And it is a revolution. It's such an exciting time to be talking about AI, to be trying AI, for us to be building solutions that use AI. And for anybody who works in contracts, I think it's also a really exciting time to start to bring AI into your process, into your workflows. And there are safe ways to do that. I think we're going to talk about that a little bit today. And there are also really dangerous ways to do that. And so after Evan gives his primer and presents his material, I'm going to jump in with a short presentation about safe practices, how to use AI safely in contracting workflows today. And then the final thing that we're going to present during this hour is what I'm calling our AI laboratory. So we're going to take a lot of the core concepts that Evan introduces and shares with us. And we're going to take some of the safety principles that I share with us. And we're going to go into one tool that we do happen to have access to, which is TermScout. And we're going to do a live demo of an AI review on the platform and just kind of talk about some of those principles and apply them to this actual contract review that we're going to upload. So to tee that up and set up the AI laboratory for us, Preston, can you enable screen sharing for me?
That would help. That would certainly help. Yeah, give me 1 second. Okay, you are good to go.
Okay, so in order to facilitate this AI laboratory portion of the event, I am going to upload a contract for review right now. I think it's fun to look at the OpenAI terms and conditions. We're going to talk a lot about OpenAI here, so we might as well learn a little bit about their contracts that they offer to their end users. So I'm going to take this online contract here. I'm going to copy the URL. I'm going to go into TermScout's platform. We'll see more of this in a minute, but I just want to get the contract uploaded first. So this is an IT contract. It's a IT service. The vendor, OpenAI, drafted this contract. The vendor's name is OpenAI. I'm going to just call this one. And the document's name, I think it was terms of use. We'll add this to artificial intelligence software so we can see some market comparisons. And I'm going to paste that URL right into here. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit the review button. This review is probably going to take 10, maybe 12 minutes, depending on traffic right now. That may feel like a long time, but I think you'll see, and Evan will talk a little bit about, when you're asking an AI program to do a lot of work to review hundreds and hundreds of questions, it can take a little time. So this review is in process. I'm going to hand the reins over to Evan for his portion of the presentation, and we'll come back and look at the results of that review in about 30 minutes here.
Hey, Preston, I'm going to need screen sharing as well. Thanks. All right. Hey, everyone. I'm excited to be here. As Otto and Preston have mentioned, I'm the CTO of TermScout, and by trade, I'm a machine learning engineer. And really what I specialize in as a machine learning engineer and have throughout my career is solving real world problems with machine learning and artificial intelligence. Really that applied piece of machine learning is what's super exciting to me, and what I hope is more relevant to this group than kind of a researcher's perspective. I really think a lot about how we solve real problems, how we add real value with machine learning, and particularly in natural language processing and text is what I think about a lot. So I'm going to talk about some recent history, progress in AI, natural language processing, particularly what's changed recently. And finally, what kinds of applications these recent changes have enabled, and why now is fundamentally different than it has been in the last decade or so, and hopefully convince you that now is a good time to check out Term Scout, other applications, really anyone working with AI and contracts. We think it's all exciting, and hopefully this serves as some education, inspiration, background, and more. So one point I really like to drive home at the start is that applying machine learning to text, contracts are a great example of text, at a large scale is not something that's particularly new. If you use CLMs, or if you actually use a lot of tools and applications in your daily life, a lot of it's powered by AI and machine learning, and in particular contracts. I think this point can really help take some of the edge off of any hesitation to jump in with new tools and new technology, just knowing that it's been around, and there are recent advances that we're going to talk about and that are super exciting. But in general, this isn't new, and you're probably using a lot of the stuff today, particularly if you use common contract lifecycle management tools or other extremely common products on the market. So to start, let's look a little bit at where we've been. And before we even do that, I want to talk about some definitions. I think looking at some of these definitions in the AI space, it's really like buzzword soup. You hear a lot of these terms floating around, and you might think a term like NLP, which stands for natural language processing, or LLMs, which stands for large language models. These are terms, beyond the layperson's grasp or something like that. But what I've really tried to do is, in 3 to 5 words, just explain what each of these things are, because I think they are concepts that a little bit of baseline fluency can really help be precise with language. And in law, we know being precise with language is important. It's the same in technical spaces. It's the same when you're trying to figure out what products and services you should be using or might be important to you or your business, or if you're arguing at a dinner party. All of these things are better when you've got a little bit of fluency. So hopefully this is helpful. We'll share these slides. This could be a cheat sheet for you for some of these things. And I think it's useful to get a decent grasp of what these different terms are. And in particular, how they overlap, how they umbrella, and how some of them are synonymous, some of them aren't. This Venn diagram can show you that all of these different buzzwords roll up into this AI umbrella. It's really broad. The AI umbrella, you could even put a further umbrella over this, just called computer science or something like that. AI is very broad. These other terms overlap in different ways. Things like machine learning and natural language processing, as you can see in this Venn diagram, aren't mutually exclusive. There's natural language processing without machine learning. There's machine learning without natural language processing. And it's really within this machine learning and natural language processing Venn diagram that we get these newer, more exciting buzzwords like large language models, generative text models. These are at the crux of machine learning and natural language processing. And the Venn diagram shows that they're somewhat synonymous, but not quite. And this can serve as another cheat sheet to think about this stuff. And also to point out that these tons of other stuff bubbles, this whole world of AI really expands to many, many other things. Computer vision is a good example. Recommendation engines in Amazon and Netflix, search, Google search, things like that. There's tons of other stuff that don't have much to do with contracts or this space at all. So hopefully this can get us started speaking some of the same language as we get going. When talking about history in natural language processing and AI and ultimately in contracts, the last decade is extremely relevant. It's relevant to me mainly because the bulk, the meat of a lot of my career and the time I've spent working on applications has been in this last decade block. and also just the speed of innovation that we can see in the latter part of the decade, and the impact that I think it's having on a lot of industries. It's a great micro window into some of the Moore's law principles in computer science, where we really see exponential growth and progress applied to something like advances in AI. Strap in, we're going to talk about a couple papers, a couple of even further buzzwords, to give a little bit of history about who the players are in this space and how this stuff is really unfolded. So starting out earlier in the decade, between 2013 and 2018, a lot of what was happening in NLP and AI was actually at Google. The three papers actually, a paper about this concept called word2vec, which is it's a technique used to build natural language processing applications, was developed at Google in 2013. And then 5 years later, you see, I already jumped in the last decade from 2013 to 2018. 5 years later, we saw the invention of this idea called a transformer. That's the word some of you may have heard, some of you may have not. It's actually what a lot of this generative AI is all built on top of. This idea of the transformer was developed again at Google in two separate papers, one in late 2017, one in early 2018, that really revolutionized how we think about building natural language processing and machine learning models for a lot of the applications that I've worked on in my career. This was kind of the pace of advancement that I was used to, and I think a lot of people were used to, was years would go by and you would kind of have a new advancement that would enable better, faster, cheaper machine learning applications that are more accessible to more people, and you would go years between some of these advancements. It's interesting. The transformer was really like a foundational underpinning of this generative AI era. Whether 2018 sounds like a long time ago or not a long time ago, it really depends on your perspective. But that being said, like a lot of the legacy, older type of machine learning applications that you and I use, and a lot of the products we use, and in legal tech applications, were spawned of this era in the earlier part of the last decade, and even accelerated into 2018. Where things really started to change recently is actually in the last 3 years. This probably won't come as a surprise to most of you, but a lot of this was driven by OpenAI and all of the recent types of models and products and services that you've been hearing about: GPT-3, ChatGPT, GPT-4, Google Bard. All of these different things is all much more recent. This all happened in the blink of an eye. Even in this decade microcosm, it's in the blink of an eye in the broader history of AI that spans before this. And another kind of depends on your perspective. Was this a long time ago or not a long time ago? GPT-3 has been around since 2020. That was OpenAI's kind of first like really popular product that got, there was a New York Times article soon after this. It got some press. A lot of people had not heard of it yet. We tried it out for the kinds of things we wanted to do with contracts, and we really had trouble getting it to do what we wanted to do much better than we could with things like transformers, like these BERT-style transformers from the 2018s era. It really starts to take off in 2022. You get ChatGPT, massive popularization. This idea of an easy UI, an easy text box. Anyone can go in. You don't have to know how to train a model. You don't have to know what word2vec or attention mechanisms or BERT is. You just go in and type stuff and tell it to do things for you. That really unlocked a lot of the magic that I think a lot of us have seen, and that's gotten the world really excited about this stuff. And we accelerate further. GPT-4 just came out in March of this year. This was only a few months ago. And then finally, just after that, right as GPT-4 was coming out, we get another bubble on my chart here, but this was weeks after, if not some before. We saw an additional explosion in private competitors like Google's Bard model, which is just like ChatGPT. You can go to their site, play with it, and then an open source boom as well. Hugging Face is a big player in the open source space. They released their own model that you can use just like a regular chat interface. A large open source model called the Falcon 40B is now available on AWS. Like regular AWS developers can deploy and host this on their own. This kind of acceleration of both advances in AI and different ways we can access it, like diversity of types of applications. Some may use open source, some may plug into OpenAI. This is all happening very fast. And what I think a lot of this powered in the earlier part of the decade, and even much further back before the decade, was what I call the legacy contract AI stack. A real poster child of this legacy contract AI stack is OCR and just digitization of contracts. This is quite old technology. It's very table stakes for a lot of the tech that we use, but it's something that like really anyone could do. You don't need to be a legal expert to transcribe a written contract or an image of it or a scanned low-res image of a contract into a word processor. It's a great example of the type of technology that I think is of an earlier time that was really based around this idea of how do we make it easier to store and navigate contracts. Even more exciting things like clause and section identification. So just being able to identify is there a force majeure clause in here? Are there data rights described in here? Is there an intellectual property section? Making it so that, with a side nav in a web browser, you could jump around in the contract more easily. It's a lot about navigating contracts. And you even get a little further, simple redlining, basic playbook execution, like, is there my playbook says I won't sign anything without a force majeure clause or something like that. That kind of basic playbook execution is where we see that like 2018 and earlier technology really enabling. So what has changed recently? In my opinion, two things have changed fundamentally in this latter part of the decade timeline. The first is that generative AI has given us a generally capable machine that can do many, many different tasks that it wasn't specifically trained on. So what this means in practice is all of these kinds of applications, things that have been super common in machine learning and AI for a very long time. A lot of the things I've worked on in my career in different applications outside of legal tech or in different domains, these were things that we could do pretty well, but they required individual training and dedicated data sets in order to train them. So if you wanted to train a machine learning model that could categorize a grocery product into produce, meat, or consumer staples, you would have to go find a bunch of product descriptions, thousands of them, label them all, hire dedicated machine learning engineers to train a model, host that model on dedicated infrastructure, just to do it. Actually, if you're using ChatGPT, it sounds like a pretty simple, thing that's not that interesting. That's what the kind of stuff we were doing throughout my career and in the past. And now, GPT-4, one of these other models, can do all this stuff out of the box, doesn't need to be trained. You don't need to hire machine learning engineers to build applications on top of this stuff. It just works. And when you see the magic of this stuff just working, it's super exciting. I definitely think back on all the times doing all the hard things I just described, and it's like it's very, very fun to just see it work. So that's our first big change, a generally capable model. Our second big change is substantial and rapid improvement in complex reasoning tasks, which truly changes what's possible with contracts. So if you combine a generally capable model, so a model that can do lots of different things, even ones that it wasn't trained on, and you combine that with a model that has very advanced complex reasoning skills. And I'm talking about things like pouring through paragraphs and paragraphs of tax code and making calculations to decide whether a deduction is reasonable or how you calculate something like certain exemptions to taxes in ways that like you need an accountant to do, or you need a person to spend a lot of time pouring through this stuff, thinking really hard. We're seeing these models do this stuff in seconds and do it pretty well. It's not perfect, but it's this complex reasoning that's really different than like, the kind of AI that we saw winning at Jeopardy. That's more of like knowing a lot of facts, which I think is really, really different than complex reasoning. Even chess, the AI working on chess is really just a computation machine. It can do a lot of computations really fast. The complex reasoning that we can see these models do today is much newer. and the progress is rapid. The best illustration of this, in my opinion, is GPT-4, one of OpenAI's models, which the headline is that it passed the bar. That's what we saw in March. This was headline news in March. GPT-4 came out, it gets 90th percentile on the bar. This is the kind of complex reasoning that is new. And to kind of explain how new it is, we can look at GPT 3.5. This is OpenAI's model released just before GPT-4. It's the model that powered the big ChatGPT release in late 2022, so still not that long ago. It scored a 10th percentile on the bar exam. So we go from 10th percentile on the bar exam to 90th percentile on the bar exam in one iteration of a model from OpenAI. This is what I'm talking about when we talk about something that changed. What's new? What's now possible that wasn't possible before? Working in legal tech, working with contracts, working with AI. This is super. This is an eye catcher. And when you see something like this, you want to say, I got to see this thing in action. So to put this in a little more context, I do want to talk a little bit about OpenAI as a company. And I think it can really help illustrate the different layers of this ecosystem when you're thinking about all these names of things you're hearing being thrown at you: ChatGPT, GPT-4, OpenAI. A lot of these words sound the same. Like ChatGPT sounds like GPT-4. And people talk about building on top of this stuff and like what that means. I really hope this diagram can help educate a little bit and put some of this in context. And you can actually like reproduce this same kind of vertical mapping of a company and its models and its the APIs and its user interface, all to similar competitors that are going to be popping up. I use OpenAI as an example. I think they're the leader right now, and they're popular. They're a household name now in the AI space. But I think it's helpful to think about OpenAI as this company. They're a company. They were founded in 2015. They're a private for-profit company. They produce these LLMs, these large language models. GPT-3, GPT 3.5, GPT-4. These is just the naming nomenclature to increment the versions of these models. And these are just models that they've trained and that they own. The way you access these models is probably, for most people, is through ChatGPT. This is a B2C interface, web-based UI, and it allows you to access these models. If you pay for the premium, you can pick which model you're using, and you can access these models that a company, OpenAI, has trained to do any task that you like. But what's more interesting, what allows software companies, mostly in the B2B space, but really in any, in the consumer space, build software products on top of these same models, the ones that pass the bar, the ones that OpenAI is constantly iterating on. Third-party applications are able to access these models directly through APIs. So you can be using a product that really looks nothing like ChatGPT. There's no chat window. It doesn't look like a chatbot, but it's still powered by the same underlying model that is the general purpose model with complex reasoning skills like GPT-4 through a platform that just really looks nothing like this in practice. And I think that's where we're going to see a lot of excitement, where you can kind of get past. I mean, the chatbot is cool. It's awesome. I use it all the time. I love it. But you can get a little beyond that when you start to think about whether it's tech startups or existing companies or really anyone, layering on their own subject matter expertise, layering on their own creativity, listening to their customers about what they want that makes this stuff easier and safer to use, using APIs directly into OpenAI's models. So where are we going in the contract, in terms of applications of contract AI? We've got this recent change that I just described, general purpose models with very advanced complex reasoning skills in a way that they did not have very recently. The way that we think about this is in terms of administrative tasks and substantive legal work. So I've talked about some of this already in terms of the legacy contract AI stack, but we see the past, or even just it doesn't even have to be temporal. It can just be the tip of the iceberg of things like extracting simple data points and doing OCR. It's really more administrative work that any white collar professional could be trained to do. Probably pretty tedious, probably not that exciting. We see the transition further into substantive legal work, things like negotiating contracts, things like more complex playbook execution. So not the kind I was talking about that just asks, our playbook requires there to be a force majeure clause, something much more complicated than that, to really allow us to execute complex playbooks against contracts. Doing things like looking at a contract term by term, not just like larger section by section, but very, very detailed term by term, understanding who does this favor, and doing market analysis. When you're able to use AI to break down contracts into these substantive data points, doing market analysis to understand, is this market? And to know this immediately upon waiting a couple minutes for an AI to work on a contract. And finally, to do all this in support of negotiation, which to me is some of the more substantive legal work you could think of. Which leaves us with the modern contract AI stack. So unlike the legacy AI stack, this is much more about solutions versus tools to store and navigate contracts. Really leapfrogging over those tools to store and navigate contracts to directly understanding the things you need to know in a contract to assess your risk, to understand your rights and obligations, and to do all that in a space where the contract is aware of the context. Who are the parties? Who am I? As the person analyzing the contracts. Doing things like very substantive question answering. And what I mean by that is not just, like we said before, clause identification, more like, is the customer's liability capped? Is there a liability limits on liability clause? We're talking about very substantive things like, does the contract cap the customer's liability? But also, what is the cap? How does that compare to market? Are there exceptions to the cap? Are there exclusions to those exceptions? Is there a secondary cap? Are there exclusions to that secondary cap? These are the types of things where we're talking about going into deep detail that not only is just hard to reason when you're reading through this stuff for anyone, but also that requires an overlay of subject matter expertise and context to give these models to be able to reason through it in the way that you as a contract professional would reason through it. And all of this wraps up, I think, with the second to last item, next generation data collection. When we talk about understanding things like that, exclusions to the secondary cap, that kind of detailed data, being able to collect that at scale, being able to understand your aggregate risk or rights and obligations in the face of a merger and acquisition, or in any number of scenarios where you want to know, not just for a single contract, should I sign this? Is it risky? Does it meet my criteria? But at scale, what have you already agreed to in aggregate, and what you might do about that? So I will stop there, hand it over to Otto. Hope this was helpful and interesting, and thanks, everyone.
Awesome, Evan. Thank you so much. That was riveting. A lot of that's even new for me. I've been working with Evan for some time, but it's fun to just take a zoomed out view and really understand some of this terminology. I really liked what you said, Evan, about, look, we know how important precision is in the law as contract professionals. Our words matter a lot. And what I love about Evan's presentation is it just gives us, I think, all of us, a lot more, a clearer understanding, a clearer picture of a lot of the alphabet soup and word soup that's floating out there, and just a more, a greater proficiency in this very important, very evolving field. So thanks, Evan, for teeing all of that up. That was really fun. Okay, what do we have next? I am going to share a couple thoughts on safe use of AI. And then we're going to go into the AI laboratory, and we're going to look at the OpenAI contract as part of the AI laboratory. There are a few questions that I'm going to address that are in the Q&A that I'm going to address live during the laboratory section. Mike asked a question about access to data. We'll go look at OpenAI's contract using TermScout's AI tool to try to assess that question. Samantha asked a question about how TermScout gets market data when a lot of it's confidential. I'll talk about that too when we get into the laboratory portion. And Anansiata, pardon my pronunciation, asked about privacy protection too. We'll also take a look at that. So I'll hit those shortly. And without further ado, I'm going to share my screen. Go ahead.
And I'll just say one thing too, is you're pulling that up, Otto. For those of you who want a broad view into all contract AI tools that are available in the world, or that they're cutting edge or that we've looked at, there will be more coming from Law Insider on that. Obviously today we're going to, as Otto will do here in a moment, we're going to spend some time with TermScout. And so you'll get to see what it looks like to build on top of OpenAI and what it means for you. And to his point, it will answer some of your questions. But this is not going to be an exhaustive view into all of the cool tools that are out there, but that is coming. So continue to keep an eye out for more from us that'll go deeper into more tools that you may adopt, but definitely take a look at TermScout, because I think this is something we obviously have partnered with them closely at Law Insider, and we're pretty proud of that partnership. So Otto, I'll pass it back to you.
Thanks. Yeah, Preston, we'll learn about the best tool today. And then at a later day, Preston will come in and share with you guys some of the other tools that are out there.
No doubt.
I'm teasing actually. And some of the questions are about TermScout specifically. And I do want to be clear, this isn't a sales pitch. We're really trying to just share some thoughts on this and the like. We will, for anybody who is specifically interested in learning about TermScout as a prospective user customer, we're going to hold an after-hours session at the end of this webinar where we'll answer your questions more specifically about TermScout. We're trying really hard to make this first hour true to what we promised, which is to bring some good content and not pitch you guys too hard on our tool or anybody else's tool. So with that said, I want to talk about how to use contract AI safely. To me, this is the most important topic right now. Most of you are here, I imagine, because you're imagining using contract AI solutions. You're already using them. You want to use them. And as a contract professional, you know how important it is to do so safely, right? Our job as contract professionals is to mitigate risk for our clients. And the worst thing we can possibly do, the scariest thing I think we can imagine, is introducing new risk. So we're going to talk for a few minutes just about how do you leverage AI? How do you mitigate the risks while harnessing the benefits? And it starts with a basic premise that I believe very, very strongly in, which is this: AI can help us do our jobs better and faster today. If Evan didn't convince you of that, hopefully some of the things we see in the laboratory will. But the fact of the matter is the technology is here, and there are a number of use cases that I think really can help you be more efficient, more effective at your jobs. And the great part about that is more time on our hands. There are a lot of ways you can use more time. Maybe it's going to the beach, maybe it's spending more time with your family, but we can all agree that becoming more effective and efficient at our jobs creates more time that we can use however we see fit. This is the goal, right? But using AI also introduces new risks. And you don't have to go far to find examples of these risks. This headline caught the world's imagination, surprised all of us when we saw the lawyer who cited fake cases using ChatGPT just a few weeks ago and was sanctioned by the judge. And this was just a huge embarrassment. And this is, a great example of the lawyer or contract professional that none of us want to be. Another one was Samsung employees who accidentally leaked sensitive information into ChatGPT. And again, headlines, embarrassment, just the type of things we don't want to be a part of when we use AI. So those are some of the big risks. And again, it begs the question, how do we harness the benefits of AI today while mitigating the risks? So I'm going to introduce a framework, and it starts with a metaphor that I think is very, very appropriate right now, which is, I think the answer to this question is, you think about contract AI the same way we think about Wikipedia. Wikipedia is a great place to get started in your research. It's a great place to get facts in a low risk scenario. It is not the source that you want to cite in a presidential debate or any kind of high stakes thing. We all know this about Wikipedia. We know that it's valuable for a number of use cases, but it has flaws based on the model due to the way that the information is curated. And we still love and use Wikipedia, at least I do today. I just am a responsible user of it. I know intuitively now that there are certain things that I can use it safely for and certain things I cannot. And that's the same for AI, I think today. It does make mistakes. It does, there are risks. And the goal is figure out how to pinpoint those risks. So I'm going to introduce a framework for safe use of AI in contracts specifically. And it basically starts with just a handful of key questions to ask when you're setting up or thinking about ways to leverage AI in your contracting workflows. The questions I think to ask are, first, who should use contract review AI? Second, what are the safest types of tasks to use it on? Next, what are the safest types of transactions to use it on? And finally, other best practices to follow. So I'm going to go through a few slides addressing each of these kind of core questions and hopefully leave everyone with some tactical, real world ideas about safe ways to get started, dip your toes in the water using AI for contracts. Okay, so the first question, who should use contract review AI tools? So in each of these slides, you'll see a spectrum, kind of low risk to high risk. And the low risk people to use these tools, I think, are experienced contract professionals, right? If you are an experienced contract professional, you know what to look for in contracts. You're capable of double checking the AI's work. I'll talk more about this in a minute, but I think this is really, really important. And you understand the legal implications. So you are the subject matter expert. To me, putting a powerful tool like contract review AI in the hands of a subject matter expert is low risk. However, on the flip side, putting contract review AI into the hands of someone who has no contracting experience at all is the high risk version of this. This is what I think you should probably not do in your business or with your client. Why? They don't really know what to look for. So they're not really capable of double checking the AI's work, and they don't understand the legal implications. So the first question to me shakes out very clearly. If you yourself have the requisite background and experience to be able to double check the work of the AI, I think that's a good starting point for saying, all right, there may be a safe path forward for me here. All right, so let's go talk next about best task use cases. So what types of tasks or jobs can you or should you think about doing? Same thing, we'll talk about low risk versions and high risk versions. I think low risk tasks involve triage, routing contracts. So taking a contract and risk rating it with AI and saying, oh, this one seems to be pretty good. We can maybe route this to a non-attorney resource. Oh, this one seems really bad. It violates a lot of our provisions. High risk. So triage routing, you're still sending it to an expert, but you're using the AI to figure out which expert to send it to. Issue spotting is a great one. Why? If AI spots an issue for me that I may have missed, that's a huge win. And it's really easy to double check individual issues. So if it says, hey, there's a non-compete in this contract where you wouldn't expect one, cool, I can hopefully double check that very easily. It's a great, great use case. And finally, just high volume, low stakes contract analysis. So think NDAs, business associate agreements, EULAs are some of the most common types that we see, privacy policies maybe. Okay, so some high risk task use cases. I think anything that's fully automated to me feels really dangerous, even with the advancements in AI today. So we get a lot of customers who come on and they're like, I just want the AI to do it all for me. And we're like, no, first of all, we don't do it all for you because there's a lot of pieces that still just, I think are better suited for humans to do. Redlining is a good example. TermScout doesn't redline contracts. We haven't seen yet a redlining AI solution that customers seem to agree actually saves time. It's a really hard problem to solve.
Otto, can you just say that again? Because that is a statement that we can just move past quickly and continue going. But if you were to say that again, or if I can say it differently, you're saying that there is no perfect AI contract review tool, not yours, not any CLM provider. Like, it just doesn't exist. And that does not mean that it is not useful. It just means, as you're guiding us here, that similar to your anecdote on Wikipedia, that it's how you deal with imperfection, not the, oh my gosh, it's not perfect, I'm shocked.
That's my proposition, Preston. I firmly believe that, and you summarized it perfectly. Okay, other high risk use cases are tasks that are not easily auditable. So, this is anything where you can't quickly check the facts. The erroneous cases cited is that one was actually easily auditable. The problem was that the user didn't actually do the audit. But this is, I think, a key if you're examining alternative use cases or thinking about ways to use AI. I think a core question you should always ask is there an easy way for me to audit the work? If so, then there's a good path forward that it might be able to save me some time. But if not, I'm taking a huge leap of faith on leveraging that AI because I don't have a way to check its work. Okay. Finally, we'll talk about the best types of transactions. So on the low risk side of the equation here, you've got low risk, high volume transactions, NDAs, BAAs, EULAs. We talked about this a little bit. The other, I think, really good use case for AI today is anything where the next best alternative is nothing. So an example of that is we have some clients who have told us, hey, we just don't have the bandwidth to actually have a human being look at any contract that is for under X dollars of spend. And as long as it doesn't meet these other couple of risk triggers, we actually will just blindly sign it. All right. I'll never name those customers, but we know this happens. We know these policies exist. The volume of contracts is so great that there are just a lot of those out there. We know that individual contributors at companies around the world are clicking EULAs all the time. They're accepting these online terms and conditions that, they're technically signing on behalf of their company, but it's probably going through no review. These are examples of transactions, I think, that are probably often getting no review. And I think introducing AI for some high level risk checking is a great use case of anything is better than nothing, right? Wikipedia is always better than having absolutely no idea, anything about the subject matter or the contract that you're reviewing. On the high risk side, this is obvious, but it's the inverse, high value transactions. The highest risk thing I think you can do is try to use AI as a substitute for expert human review. I'm really firmly of the belief, and I know this might be bad news to some of you who were hoping that, you could actually go to the beach, that the time where you could retire and have the AI do your job entirely for you might be near. It's not. I think the value of human judgment and what we contribute as humans to the equation is still an absolutely necessary part of the equation. And I think it will be for the foreseeable future. And we could debate for ages how long that is, but that's the reality we live in today. So let me wrap it up with a great use case for AI that pulls all these concepts together. And then we'll go through a dangerous use case. And then we'll spend our last 10 minutes or so in the AI laboratory. Okay, great use case. Experienced contract professional who uses contract review AI to issue, spot, and triage contracts on low risk, high volume contracts. So how do they do that? They develop a framework to use AI to do first pass reviews. They use AI risk ratings to determine who reviews the contract. And then that reviewer, the assigned reviewer, spot checks the AI output on the highest risk areas of review. So they use the issues that are spotted, they check those, and they spot check the AI. Okay, that's a great use case that you can do today. A lot of our customers are doing this, and this is an area where we're seeing 50, 60, 70% reductions in review times on these types of contracts. Really great use case. Okay, let's talk about a dangerous use case. A startup leader who has no contract experience wants to use contract review AI to review contracts without having to engage legal counsel. I get it. I get the desire. Really dangerous though. They use it on high-risk contracts, sales contracts, and they use it as a substitute for proper legal counsel. You know, we get customers that want to do this today. We get this question a lot. This is just, we just aren't here yet. So please don't do this, and don't let your clients do this. Okay, I am going to zoom out and drop into Preston. I know I want to leave a few minutes for you at the end of this. So I'll have to do a quick and dirty version of the AI laboratory to tie some of these concepts together. And I'll hand it over to Preston, and anybody who wants to stay for the after hours event, we can double click on some of the AI laboratory pieces.
Yeah, and before you do that, we have about 18 good questions. So I am, no, do your thing, Otto. This is the best use of our time, but I just want to say, if you can stay after hours, and when we say after hours, we mean in 10 minutes, we're going to formally end the event, except the three of us are going to stay and we're going to do a live demo and we're going to answer questions. And I'm sorry if you can't stay and you asked a question. This is not a bait and switch. We will follow up via email with an answer to your question. Didn't mean to do that, but we're just running up on time. So we will get to questions in the overtime session if you can stay. And if you can't, we'll email you an answer. Otto, back to you.
Yeah, great. And Evan, if you want to try to, if there are any of these questions, if you're monitoring the Q&A, any that are perfect, well suited for you, you feel free to jump in there and answer some of those. Okay, so the AI laboratory, you all saw in the beginning of this webinar, I uploaded the OpenAI terms of use, this contract review. It did take about 11, 12 minutes to complete, but we got the results back. Here's the updated date here. And this is what we've got back. I'm going to do just a quick, really quick overview. You've got basically multiple modules. These are kind of like different views into analyzing, understanding this contract on the Term Scout platform. And I'm going to just try to tie in some of the concepts that Evan mentioned and show you some real world examples. So one of the things Evan talked about is the ability for AI to do more complex reasoning and more substantive question answering. And legacy AI models, they couldn't really do these really complex questions, but we are in an era now where we can. So the AI, we went in and asked a number of questions like, what are the limits on the vendor's liability in this particular contract? I called the vendor OpenAI 1 just to, I don't know why I did that honestly, but that's what it is. It's OpenAI 1 in this contract review. So it's got the liability cap. It's showing that there are no exceptions to the cap, that there are some indirect damages excluded. We got some pretty complex analysis here that it's gone in and done to really understand what's going on. You've got the structured data version of these questions and answers here. This is that substantive question answering. But you've also got I think a pretty cool complex reasoning. This is a pure AI. This is actually an OpenAI generated summary of the core information about this particular topic in this box here. So I think these are some good examples. If you go through this analysis, you'll see lots of other stuff. What types of indemnities does the customer agree to provide to OpenAI in this particular contract? And again, you'll see it broken out in a structured data format here, and then in just a generalized format up here. One of the things that's pretty cool about this is, and another thing that Evan mentioned, one of the more complex capabilities you can add in once you get to this substantive question answering phase is risk rating and favorability rating. So in this particular contract, the AI said that the customer is indemnifying OpenAI for claims based on customers' content, data, or materials. A number of other claims that the customer is indemnifying for, some issues around scope, a lot of indemnities going from the customer to the vendor here. And so the AI is rating this and saying, this is pretty vendor favorable indemnity. So you've got some opinions coming out of this that are saying, hey, we think that this is good, that this is bad for the customer, good for the vendor in this particular circumstance. You've also got the structured data piece, enables something that I think is really, really cool, which is auditability. One of the things I talked about in the safe use of AI piece was the importance of being able to audit the work of the AI. So in this particular case, the AI is saying the customer indemnifies OpenAI for this particular claim. And if you click on this little button, you get access to the source language that the AI relied on to make this determination. What's really interesting and cool about Term Scout, and if you're looking at other tools, I think this is a great question to ask, is are these citations, if there is auditability and there are citations to the source language, are those also generated by AI or pulled directly from the contract, right? Because we all know that AI can hallucinate. Like, this may be wrong, but what Term Scout does, I think, really well is says, all right, we're going to give you auditability, and that's not going to be generated by AI. So this is actually pulled directly from the contract. It's incapable of hallucinating. So you know that this language is true from the contract. And if this really matters, you're a contract expert, you can double check the work and decide whether or not you agree that this indemnity equals this provision, right? Okay, the last thing I'll show is Evan talked about complex playbook execution as one of the other things that, you know, you can do now with some of these more advanced models. Just in the last, really honestly, in the last couple of years, this has become possible. You can now build playbooks that say, right, if we have answers to all these substantive questions, you can say, all right, I want to make sure that the customer's liability is capped. In this case, I can see that it's not. I want to make sure that vendor's liability is capped at 12 months fees or greater. So you can build this type of logic into contract review AI programs and then apply that logic consistently across contracts. And, you know, again, the citations are all right here. So auditability lets you quickly double check the AI's work and decide whether or not you agree with the particular statement. So I regret that we didn't leave as much time as I wanted for the AI laboratory piece of this, but I think we're at probably a good time for me to hand this over to Preston to wrap us up. And then for anybody who wants to stick around, we'll see you again in a few minutes.
Cool. Thank you, Otto. Thank you, Evan. This was great. We're going to do an overtime session. We're going to do some housekeeping items to wrap up in the next 2 minutes. And then we're going to take a 30-second break, minute break. If you need to run to the bathroom, you want to grab a coffee, you want to take the dog out, whatever you need to do. And then you can come back and hang out with these guys for another 30 minutes or so. We'll answer the questions that you've submitted. There's some great ones. There's some mediocre ones too. We're going to answer all of them. I'm not going to say which is which, but thank you everyone for asking as many questions as you have. We have 340 people on. Yes, the webinar was recording. We're going to send it out. Yes, we're going to send copies of the slides. What else? We will be sharing more information, not only about Term Scout, but also about AI in general as it relates to contracts via email. So keep an eye out for emails from Law Insider in the near future. A few other things. When you exit this event today, you're going to get redirected to the Law Insider Term Scout partnership page. We have an exclusive arrangement with Term Scout. So as Otto said, this wasn't a sales pitch, although you're about to get one in 2 minutes. But this was not meant to be one. But we do have a reseller partnership with them. We have an exclusive discount that's only available to Law Insider subscribers. You can take advantage of it. I'll also share the link in chat here in a minute, but you should get redirected to it automatically when you exit. Don't exit yet though, but when you do, that will happen. We also send out an email with a survey where if you are highly critical of today and you thought that this was not what you expected or not as good as you expected, you can leave that candid feedback for us. And similarly, if you thought it was wonderful and you want us to do more things like that, you can share that feedback as well. Otto Hansen and Evan Harris, they live this every day. This is a learning curve for all of us. I think that the most impactful slide, no offense, Evan, that I saw today was Otto's framework for how you think about technology like this. Not only the slide that shows sort of safe use cases and dangerous ones, but sort of what are the circumstances under which you should use this, and what is your framework for using it? We've been selling Term Scout now for a few weeks. 85-90% of the people who buy it are super happy. There's 10% who are not, and they're not because either they expected it to do the things that Otto talked about, which are impossible, which means it's replacing a person, it's doing all work perfectly, or they just simply didn't have a framework or model to use AI. And so whether or not you use Term Scout, I do believe all of us, every single one of us on this webinar, will be using AI in the near future to assist us in our work, in our legal work, in our contract, in our transactional work. And so having a frame, and I think we will be using it long before it is perfect. And so developing your framework, I'll send a copy of that slide, print that out, put it on your office wall somewhere, share it with a friend, and just remind yourself that having a model to use these tools is as important as using them and having access to them at all. Lon Sider is going to continue to do these webinars. We're at the top of the hour. Otto, Evan, thank you so much. Recording, yes. Slides, yes. More webinars with Otto and Evan, yes. I'm launching a podcast in a few weeks called Future of Contracts. I'm going to email you about it via Law Insider. That is it. We're going to take a pause right now. So if you need to jump, you can. We understand. And if you have 30 minutes to hang out with three of us, we'll answer all the questions. Evan's going to, or maybe both, but Otto and Evan are going to do a live demo. More time, more of what Otto has just walked us through. And I think that's it. Yeah, and there's some questions. I know there's an international audience. Can we just jump into that, Otto, while we're sort of giving ourselves a break here? Term Scout is not international yet, right? I mean, we're not there yet. And so someone was asking about international pricing, and we don't have it because my assumption is that we may not be international ready yet. Is that right?
It's a great question. We don't support any foreign languages. Sorry, we only support English language, but you can use Term Scout for any contract in the English language that we support. So whether you're in South Africa, India, UK, or the United States, or dealing with a contract, because what Term Scout really is doing is all it's doing is saying there is an indemnity for third-party IP infringement in this contract, or there is not. We're just answering these questions about what the contract says. It's up to you in your jurisdiction to determine whether that is enforceable in that jurisdiction, what the jurisdictional issues are there. But we're really just telling you, what does this contract purport to do or to bind you to?
Great. Okay. So listen, folks, there's 268 of you still here. We've given you a chance to leave, but now you got to stay. You got to hang out with Otto and Evan, where they're going to run this 30 minutes. This is going to be a live demo and Q&A session of Term Scout as a product. This is the product that Law Insider is reselling. You can buy it for $99 a month. It's month to month. You can cancel it. Why should you do it? You should do it because it's a good product. You should do it because it's a really good way to dip your toe and test out AI applications in your contract process. And if you don't like it, it's pretty easy to just not use it anymore, but I suspect that you will. So without further ado, Otto, let's jump in. However you want to do this. If you want to start with the questions, if you want to jump into the live demo, I'll defer to you and Evan.
Yeah, why don't I do maybe 5 minutes of questions? I haven't had a chance to review all of them, but I'm just going to skim for common themes. We talked about, there were a number of questions about privacy earlier, privacy with AI tools generally. So I will, maybe in my demo, we'll go look at how to use Term Scout to answer those questions. Well, there are a lot of questions in here, which is awesome. Maybe I should actually jump into the demo. Let me do that. Because I think the demo will actually answer a number of these, and then we can go in at the end and do a live Q&A with some of these questions that are in the chat or with any other live format. Okay, so let me share my screen again. thank you all for staying. Super excited to share with you a little more details about how this works. And I think what we'll do for the demo is maybe I'll share just a more detailed review of this OpenAI live AI review with, an aim of giving you an honest assessment. What are the strengths and weaknesses of Wikipedia? We know it's not perfect, but I think the more we can understand where the imperfections are, the better and more comfortable we can get with identifying those sweet spot use cases and people on our team and tasks and contract types. So, okay, so we looked at playbooks a little bit. Playbooks are, a way of programming your risk criteria into contracts. These are for playbooks, custom playbooks are not included in the Scout plans that we're selling through Law Insider. But if you have a Scout plan, you can upgrade and add playbooks to your account. And then we can go in and build these for you. But what's really cool is most contract types do have a handful of default playbooks built in. Like there's a deal breakers playbook that you can apply to any IT contract that just says, what are the most common things that we expect to see in IT contracts? The baseline stuff, the deal breakers we want to make sure are not present. Let's screen for those. And every account, every Scout plan has access to this playbook, and you can apply it to any contract. And I can see in this OpenAI contract that there were a couple of fails. And I can see that there were a few passes here as well. So that's playbooks in a nutshell. The next feature I want to show is, we talked about issue spotting a little bit. This is one of my favorite use cases. I think, when I go back to when I was practicing law, I did a lot of contract review work, a lot of technology transactions, negotiations. The rare clause radar you get does a really awesome job of finding the rarest clauses within a contract and then floating those up to the top and sorting them based on who they favor. So in this contract, I've got a list of the rarest clauses in the OpenAI contract that favor the vendor. The fact that the liability cap is between $0 and $1,000 is pretty rare. For those of you who work in IT contracts, the market norm is 12 months fees. Having a fixed amount at a low cap like this is pretty rare. So I can check. The next thing you get with each of these, you've got some like general market data here too. I know some of the questions were about market data, so I'll quickly deep dive into this. When you click on the market data flyout, you get a lot more data about this. So you can see actually what other companies have this same liability cap. All of this data, someone asked about where we get our market data and how we get the rights to use it. All of these contracts are public contracts. So this is the Google Analytics public terms that are posted on their website. One of the things that makes TermScout really rich is that we've gone through and analyzed thousands of public contracts. And we've taken the position that if a vendor or a company posts their terms online, it's open game for us to go and analyze those and provide our summaries to all of our users. So you can actually see Google's contract. You can see the language here, looks right, $500. And then you can also see how common is this particular cap across different data sets. So vendors forms, negotiated contracts, customer forms. So if I'm negotiating with a vendor, I can see like, this is pretty rare cap on the vendor's liability. So hopefully I answered the question that was in the chat about where market data comes from, and also gave a little bit of a demo of how this market data works. So the rare clause radar, again, is just a really great, again, I'm not relying on this to catch every issue for me. I think this is really important. Preston double clicked on this earlier. This isn't the thing that you just go into cruise control and close your eyes and completely check out of your job. But if I'm reviewing a contract, I'd want to check the rare clause radar and just make sure I didn't miss anything big, right? Because if I accidentally missed that the vendor isn't indemnifying me for any claims, and maybe this is something that my GC actually wants to make sure that every vendor indemnifies us for third-party IP infringement, right? Something that most GCs do want their vendors to give to them. Shoot, I want to make sure that I didn't miss that or anything else that's rare and unusual in this clause. So again, going back to the issue spotting thing, it's like I can double check the work. This may or may not be right, but I can easily audit it right here and find out if it is right with the source language. Okay, so that's the rare clause radar. two other things that I want to show. We went through the term sheet earlier. Now we've seen the rare clause radar and the playbooks. Let's talk about the AI legal assistant. So what you've probably gathered already is what TermScout's doing in these first three modules is asking a bunch of standardized questions that we know matter in this particular contract type. We know that the limits on liability matter a lot. So we've mapped out and are asking those questions automatically. But we may not know that with OpenAI specifically, there's this really unique issue of like who owns inputs and outputs, right? There's this unique intellectual property issue that arises. So we could ask the AI legal assistant, which is ironically powered by ChatGPT. So we're going to enlist ChatGPT to actually ask a question about its own contract here. But let's ask, does the contract mention who owns inputs or prompts? So there's a free form question that we can ask, hit the enter button, and we should get a response here momentarily to the question.
Pressure's on.
Yeah, it's taking a couple seconds longer than usual here. Okay, so here we've got an answer. It says, yes, the contract states that as the user, you own all input. Now, one of the things that I think is really differentiates us from using ChatGPT directly, and I saw some questions in the Q&A about using ChatGPT directly. I think that's a fun way to experiment with AI and whet your appetite, so to speak. But one of the things that's really hard to do, and we saw this with the lawyer who cited to the erroneous cases, he then asked ChatGPT, are these cases real? And ChatGPT came back and said, yes, they're real. And he told the judge, well, I did ask it to confirm, and it's one of those things where like the hallucinations, went on, and ChatGPT actually doubled down. It's one of the kind of scary things about using AI right now. And so this may be a hallucination, like full disclosure, this could be wrong. We may have gotten this wrong. We outsourced this to OpenAI. We know it hallucinates sometimes. But this source language, we know is right. We know it's pulled from the contract. We used our own technology to find the most relevant text in the contract and pull it up for you. And it looks like it got it in just the first version. So it cites to all of the sections of the contract that it thinks might be relevant. And, not everything is always relevant. Some of these feedback, for example, this is not that relevant, this particular inquiry. But in this particular instance, it looks like it got right to the heart of the issue right here. This is pulled directly from the contract. And it does say you may provide input and output. And as between the parties, you own all input. Okay, so I was able to quickly audit the work, ask the question, get the prediction, and then audit. And I just double clicking on the importance of that audit step.
Yeah. So Otto, and this was a part of your framework that you introduced earlier. You said high risk is things that are unauditable because you can't verify. So you're sort of practicing what you preach and saying, let's audit this, but B, more importantly, you're also using a tool or a mechanism inside your product that facilitates the audit.
Yep.
Right. So you're saying this, you said it, and I'm not sure if Evan, I can't remember if you defined hallucinations or not. We should probably define that for the group, for those who don't know, but if a hallucination has occurred inside TermScout and you want to verify it, we're also giving you a mechanism to verify it. Or audit it. So I think it's powerful because it's not just acknowledging that framework, but it's giving you a mechanism to do it that is built into the product.
Awesome. Okay, we could go on and have a really fun time asking ChatGPT to tell us more and more about its own contract. But in the interest of time, I'll let you guys go in and do this on your own and ask questions. I'll show one more feature, and then I'm going to answer. There was a question about what types of contracts are supported. I want to make sure I hit that. And then we can save the last handful of minutes for Q&A. So the last feature I'll show is the comparable contracts feature. This feature, full disclosure, works really, really well with software contracts, IT contracts. That's TermScout's history. That's our bread and butter, our origin story. we started really serving software companies, software contracts, and built a pretty robust offering around software contracts. And we're in the process of expanding beyond that. Part of what was so exciting about software contracts is there's so many public contracts to use. So we could really provide a lot of really exciting market data. So when you click on the comparable contracts in an IT contract in particular, where we have tons of public data, you'll see lots of other artificial intelligence contracts that are in this category of IT services. And I can see all the way down here, OpenAI. You can see we've uploaded this contract a couple times, and it's all showing up here on this demo account, but how it compares. There's only one contract that looks to be a little worse than the OpenAI contract from the customer's perspective. But now I can see how all these contracts compare to other, AI vendors in the space. And if you are really negotiating with an AI vendor in this particular case, you can actually open up this compare view and go do a line-by-line comparison to figure out how does the OpenAI contract compare to some of the better AI vendors in this space, like DataRobot or Datarama, who have balanced and even customer-friendly contracts. So I could actually go in and say, all right, we already know that OpenAI has this limit on the vendor's liability that's like $1,000 or something. Well, what do some of the better companies offer? Well, no surprise, 12 months fees with some exceptions to the cap, a number of exceptions from DataRobot. So I can compare the caps and the exceptions side by side. I can compare it to my own form. So a lot of our customers will upload their contract as the first of these comparisons, and then the contract they're looking at, and have somebody on their team go do the line by line. Also a really powerful use case. Great for benchmarking contracts, whether it's a contract you're negotiating with a vendor or perhaps your own contract. So a lot of really rich features in here. This feature works on any contract type that you have in. If you upload, 10 NDAs to the platform, you can go view side-by-side comparisons of those as well. So with that said, we're just about at the halfway mark of our overtime session. And I think that's a good place for me to pause here, unless Preston, Evan, anything else you think I would be remiss to not show here?
No, I think this is great.
Okay, let me address the contract first about contract types. So when you upload a contract today on TermScout, you're going to see a couple of things. First, you'll see this little additional contract types coming, and you'll see this drop-down menu. So when you upload for AI-only review, you're going to see three primary types of contracts that are supported today for AI-only review. IT contracts, our bread and butter, non-disclosure agreements, and services agreements. If you click other, you can actually upload any contract type you want, including this not listed one, any contract you want, and just interface with our chatbot. A lot of our customers said, hey, even if you haven't built out a full template for oil and gas contracts, for example, just the ability to interface with the chatbot in a way that's auditable and safer from a data security perspective is a huge value add. So we've added that feature now, and you can go check any contract type. But for the more robust offering, all the features that you just saw, where we've really mapped out everything that matters in this contract and answered those questions and tried to highlight for you, hey, here are potential issues, that we call that kind of full support contract types. We've linked to here a knowledge base article that shows sort of when we're offering different types. So DPAs coming soon, commercial M&A contracts, loan agreements. So you can see the list of contracts that are coming in the next quarter. And it's a pretty good, pretty healthy set of offerings of new contracts types that are coming down the pike. So hopefully that answers the question that I saw about contract types supported. And with that, Preston, Evan, are you seeing any questions in the Q&A?
Yeah, there's one theme. I'll go first, Evan, and then you can jump in. So one theme is ownership, privacy, data. So I'm uploading 1,000 contracts into TermScout. I am storing TermScout. Like, talk to us about sort of at the enterprise experience level, what can users expect?
Absolutely, great question. First of all, we publish a lot of information. We take data privacy, data security very seriously. We're working really hard to get our customers comfortable with our practices, with storing their contracts on our platform, all of that. We're SOC 2 certified. We go through regular audits, pen tests. All of that information is available on our website. If you go to termscout.com, you can click on in the bottom, in the footer of our website, all the way down at the bottom, you'll see here security and trust. And our security and trust portal is a way for you or your InfoSec team to go and walk through and access docs, pen tests, all of the security information about what we do. There's also links in here to like InfoSec and security FAQs, all of that stuff. So just flagging that if your InfoSec team needs to look at any of this stuff, you can click the request access button here and you'll get access to, hopefully all of the documentation that you need to assess TermScout from a security perspective. The second part of that, I think, is the privacy piece. So what is TermScout doing with my data? And the short answer to that is not a whole lot, with one exception. What we do is extract anonymized and aggregated data about what is in a specific contract type. So sorry, I'm bouncing around here. I want to actually show what that looks like. So if you go back to any of these particular pieces, there are no exceptions on OpenAI's liability cap. Now, this is a private agreement. You can see here, this lock says this review is private. No other account is ever going to see my private review that I uploaded to this private account of this contract. What will happen though is we'll add a count of 1 to say that we found one IT contract where there were no exceptions to the vendor's liability. And so when you go in and you see this counter here that says, how many vendor forms was this true in? Well, this number just went up by 1. Okay, it's present in 551 now. So it's anonymized. We don't ever say we found this in OpenAI's contract, even though in this case it was private. The contract was, it's a public contract, but we set it to private and it's aggregated. We're not even saying out of AI contracts. It's, but we do use that information to help make the platform richer for everyone. Preston, I see you leaning in. Any clarification on that?
No, I'm looking for patterns and other questions. So yeah, sorry to be distracting you with my squinting, Otto, but I think that someone asked an on-prem question, which I think is also sort of a data question relating to whether or not you can use TermScout, but it not be a cloud-based experience, or the contracts not be uploaded into TermScout as a prerequisite to use that. And I think that's one question. And then there's just more broadly, you showed the news case at the beginning of the presentation about, was it Forbes or whoever it was, they exposed public data by inputting something into GPT. Does that apply here for someone who's going to buy this and upload third-party contracts that have PII, that have confidential information? Is that now being handed over to ChatGPT as a default of using the product?
So we do use we use OpenAI as a sub-processor. So some of the contract text goes to OpenAI. Somebody asked about the OpenAI. One of the things that's really interesting about OpenAI, if you go back to Evan's chart where he showed sort of OpenAI, and then all the way down at the bottom, there are kind of 2 products, ChatGPT as a product and APIs as a product. In their terms, they actually distinguish on the privacy rights. If you're a ChatGPT product user, OpenAI says, you're granting us the rights to train on your data. And that's why those Samsung employees, I think, got into a little trouble, because they were inputting trade secrets into ChatGPT directly. And the terms are quite clear that if you do that, you're giving ChatGPT, OpenAI, the right to train on that data. It's a little scary. I think you want to be careful with what you put into ChatGPT. But the OpenAI terms also say, if you're using our API products, basically what they're saying is, we recognize that TermScout wouldn't be able to build a product on our APIs if that was true for our API partners as well. So for our API partners, we offer an opt out of that, and we promise them that we will not use their data. So we have a contractual commitment from OpenAI that the data we send them will not be used by their algorithms or trained on for their internal business purposes for anything other than to provide the services to us. And we pass that on to our clients as well. So that's
I
what
hope everybody got that. That's so important, because it's like, it's saying, okay, OpenAI, they're going to train whatever you input, they take it, accept, and it's a big accept, and it's the use case that TermScout is using, because it's a product built on top of it that prevents that data capture on the side of OpenAI. So really good question, really good answer in that. That's good news for folks who are considering using it. Evan, haven't heard from you in a bit. Anything you want to add, or any questions you see you want to comment about?
Yeah, I saw a few questions.
I think you're on mute.
Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yeah, gotcha.
Great. There are a few questions about just, and Preston, you mentioned too, this idea of hallucination, and a few questions about like how, in Otto's example of ChatGPT, where these fake legal cases or precedent that it cited came from. And Preston, you asked about just defining hallucinations for the group. And I think it's really critical to understand in these cases that the model ChatGPT in that case is not referencing a fake. It's not like it found a fake doctored, or someone created a fake court case. It's actually just making it up in its brain. It's trying to give you the best answer that it can, and 99 times out of 100, it's gonna be pretty factual. But it's not an encyclopedia. It's not going to look up answers based on a factual database. It's using a bunch of machine learning magic to try to give you the best answer it can. And the innovation is that we're finding out that that's pretty successful at solving a lot of tasks. So that's the difference. There are no fake court cases in that example. It's that it's actually just kind of making this up on the fly, similarly to how like a smart friend might make something up, even if they're just trying to give you a good answer. So that's what people in industry call hallucination. So hopefully that's helpful. A few people asked about that. Someone just asked, is GPT-4 less susceptible? It's supposedly that is correct according to OpenAI. So hopefully that continues to improve. Really quick, two other small questions I saw. One just asking where TermScout's hosted. We're hosted on AWS, and that kind of information is all available through our security page and things like that if you want to dig in more. And then I think there was one other. Oh, other questions, other thoughts about just like using TermScout, for instance, compared to ChatGPT. Like Otto talked about the citing our sources, which is something that we've talked about a lot today. We really care about, and we think is a huge value add to making all this work. Additionally, is just that if you think about going to physically use ChatGPT and pasting in like a 10,000 word contract, that's just like, one, it's probably not going to work. It's going to say that that's too much text. And two, that just sounds like a total pain to use that as like a workflow. So a lot of what our platform, and you'll see other legal tech platforms doing, is facilitating that for you. Upload your PDF, send a link to a hosted contract. We'll take care of feeding it into ChatGPT in a way that is cost effective and such. So that's another difference. If you want to try to go copy and paste 10,000 words into ChatGPT, it's going to be a little hard.
All right, we did it. We went an hour and a half. Thanks everybody for hanging out with us. I'm gonna hold on before you go. I'm putting in chat, not Q&A. So the chat bar tab, the link to, this is the Law Insider TermScout reseller pricing page. It talks about the features, it talks about the benefits, it shows the price. You can buy from there. As soon as you pay, you get immediate access. You can cancel anytime. Similar to how Law Insider subscription operates, we make it very, very easy to cancel TermScout. So if for whatever reason you are underwhelmed by it, it does not meet your needs, the use case that you intended, it just doesn't align with it, cancel it. Call us, email support@lawinsider.com. The same way we manage, we have almost 10,000 active subscribers on Linesider, paying customers. And we manage those quite well, and we make it very easy to cancel. And this will be no different, but I suspect that you won't, because it is a very good product. It's a really good tool. And I have a lot of respect for Otto and Evan and the work that they've done putting together and building this product, and a huge amount of thanks and appreciation for putting this presentation together and delivering it today. We're going to be doing more things like this in the near future. We will be recording this, or we did record it. We will be sending it out. We're sending out the slides again, as I mentioned. I'm going to be launching a Future of Contracts podcast in a few weeks. Evan and Otto, they don't know it yet, but they will be guests on that show. So you can hear more from them in the coming weeks. Oh, Jim, that you just reminded me. Great question. As in our partnership with TermScout, we're also going to be doing, I don't know if it's weekly yet or bi-weekly, but we're going to be doing live webinar demos similar to what Molly and Josh do for Linesider. We're going to do them for TermScout. So if you just want to see the product again in a smaller environment, but there's not 220 people next to you, we will host that. So again, look for your inbox for those invites. So if you're not ready to buy today, like if you're like, this is cool, price seems reasonable, I want to try it, but I still got more questions, we will enable that both through live sessions and through follow-up. So you can always email us as well. Otto, Evan, thank you guys so much for the time today. Wealth of information. You've built an awesome product. We're proud to be selling it and offering it here at Linesider. And we look forward to more webinars with you guys in the future. And thanks everyone for joining us. Take care.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.